Okay, let's begin. So, so the outcomes of this presentation you will have a real understanding of this area of IT and specifically the commercial implications of the service, key considerations that you should make when purchasing this type of service, some of the secrets of the IT industry that providers won't tell you. That's always interesting. How SCAA is different, and really giving you the tools to understand whether we're right for you, and questions you should ask when considering which IT provider is right for yourselves. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so this is so IT support is a service whereby your staff contacts a third party, such as SCAA, when they have a problem with IT. Basically, issues like with your Outlook, your internet, your phone system. Effectively, what you're doing is outsourcing the accountability for these types of issues to a company like us. Simple as that. Yeah. So not dissimilar to perhaps an advertising agency. Basically, companies like us, we have a team. Generally speaking, we have some junior staff, some senior staff, and we assign them to issues depending on the severity generally. Or I'm going to get into this in a little bit more detail later, but that's generally how it works. Yes, very important. So SLAs, this is the terms upon which support inquiries are responded to. So as a general rule, the more serious the issue, and serious is defined by how it impacts your business, the quicker it is responded to. Things like 24 by 7 or 9 by 5, these are some other areas of SLAs. Okay. Yeah, so this is a really important one. There are some elements of IT that are a commodity. Absolutely. IT support, though, is not one of them. The service, and you probably, if you're watching this slideshow, you've probably experienced really poor IT support. Yeah, this is one area where you do get what you pay for, and particularly if your company relies on IT heavily, yeah, quality is really important, and there is a huge variation between companies out there, right? Yeah. So this is alluded to is if IT is important to your organization, if uptime is important, if you're dealing with sensitive data, if your business is really reliant on IT, then IT support is going to really matter to you. Um, I can't stress this enough that the more important IT is to your organization, the more you should focus on getting the right IT support provider. Yeah. So again, going back to the concept that this is not a commodity, is inclusions and exclusions hugely differ. Um, it is critical to first establish what you need and then look at price. But as we'll get into shortly, if you don't get an IT support service that's fit for purpose, what you'll end up doing is spending a hell of a lot of money on having both internal IT resources and external IT resources. And this should be avoided where possible. Absolutely. So yeah, look at inclusions as well as price, not just price alone. It's very important. Okay. Yeah, this is fun. So I thought I'd share this one first. So one of the tricks that IT suppliers use is they artificially put people on hold, hoping that effectively they'll give up, right? This is extremely common, and IT companies like SCAA can save a hell of a lot of money by doing this. I can tell you that. Now, obviously, we don't do this, but this is if you've ever wondered why it always takes a while to get through to IT support. Well, now you know. Yeah. So this is a bad one. Um, so. Uh, what's the best way to put this? So often SMEs don't have a really good understanding of how IT works, and as a result, IT companies take advantage of this. So you need to be very careful when signing up to an IT service in recognizing the fact that what's in scope and out of scope can really affect the quality of the service that you get. And the best example of this is if you have an issue with your phone system. So an IT company might say, look, we'll support your phone system, right? Then you have an issue with the phone system. You call them, they say, oh, it's not the phone system, it's the internet. And then you ask them, well, can you help me with that? And they're like, no, that's out of scope. And this happens with SIP as well. So because of the way in which IT is all integrated and related, um, it's uh, basically IT companies can get out of doing a lot of work by just removing, by narrowing the scope of what they'll do. And it doesn't look like much on paper, but this has a real effect in reality. Um, yeah, so the difference with us, obviously, is we're very clear with what's included and what's excluded, right? We also, this is why we emphasize plain English in our proposals rather than a whole bunch of technical jargon. Yeah, and look, SCAA, often, the quality of a service like this is defined by, when a company like SCAA is required to go above and beyond. All right, and that's what we do regularly for our clients, and that's why we have very happy clients and lots of happy clients. Yeah, this one. Yeah, so this ties into this ties into inclusions and exclusions, but effectively, when you do get what you pay for to a large extent with this. And what happens often is just to get a deal across the line, IT companies will reduce the cost, right? But underscope it basically. So you end up with a solution that's very cheap, it doesn't meet your requirements. Then once once you sign up and they do the migration and what have you, it becomes very apparent that you need more stuff. And because they've already signed and because you've already signed for perhaps 3 years, it's very difficult to look at a different provider. So long story short, they reduce the price under scope. Once you sign, the service isn't fit for purpose, and then you're often forced to sign to to more services at an inflated price. It's very common. So again, this is all comes down to transparency. So SCAA is very transparent about what we're going to be doing for you, and we really give you the tools to make an informed decision. Um, yeah, yeah. So this is this is an interesting one. So uh, the the large providers of IT support place KPIs on their teams, right? But these are the first call resolution and resolution time. This is what they measure their staff on. Now, these are notoriously gamed by staff. So things like just hanging up on people and hoping they don't call back, that makes it look like they've resolved the call after one call and had a very quick resolution time. The reality is that's often not the case. This is also why people get transferred a lot, because often when you transfer a call, it looks like you've done your job, but the reality is you're just passing the buck. So again, if you've ever wondered why IT support is often so poor, this is why. Um, yeah. So yeah, the difference with us is we're a smaller company. We look after SMEs. We have very close relationships with our clients, and we focus entirely on satisfaction. Yeah. Again, something to consider. So 3 years is standard, 5 years is common. But again, this also, yeah, this can create issues. I mean, 3 years and 5 years is a long time. So if you are going to sign up to these terms, you just need to be very comfortable that that the provider you're looking to work with is committed to you and you're an important client to them. Um, I suppose the difference with us is we do offer month-to-month options. Now, sometimes this isn't the right option. Don't get me wrong, because there is hardware up front that otherwise can't be amortized. But yeah, if yeah, it's important to have the option. And yeah, the other thing as well is that often IT providers require that you only work with them. Okay, now this sometimes might be the right decision, but often isn't. So that's where SCAA is a little bit different. So we will work with existing providers of yours. Really, we're just out to provide the best possible outcome for our clients. Okay. Yeah. So again, well, this is a right sizing is a concept that I get into in some of the other presentations, but basically, you want to be in the top sort of 50 to 10 percentile um, of a provider. So what I mean by that is you don't want to be a below average size customer generally. This is the area that SMEs fall into. They get in a bit of trouble. Is they pick a brand name provider, right? So a company with 30 staff, they pick a brand name multinational provider of IT support. The reality is they're just not an important customer, and then they have a really poor experience. So when selecting a provider, it often makes sense if you're an SME to speak with the director or the owner of the provider, and if that's not made available to you, that should be a bit of a concern. Yeah, so you really want to see reference climates of comparable size or larger, and also those in a similar industry as well. That often provides proof that the company can do what they say they can do. Always get an escalation matrix. Absolutely vital. Salespeople are very transient. Your account manager in year one will most likely not be the one that's in year two or three. And you also want to have the comfort of knowing if there is an issue that you can speak to a manager all the way up to the CEO generally. Yeah. So when you get a proposal, it should be written in plain English. Okay. It should document what's included and what's excluded. A lot of IT companies hide behind the jargon to intentionally make it obscure what they're providing. There's no reason why that should be the case. It is standard practice, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that is something that SCAA avoids. That we absolutely avoid. Always get a copy of your service level agreements. Absolutely, this should be within the proposal that you are provided with. And yeah, in some scenarios, you know, it's a good bellwether that an IT provider is willing to offer month-to-month or short-term contracts. Now, they might not be the right thing for you, absolutely, but that generally speaking, any provider that does this is willing to stand by their service, and it's always a good sign. I mean, this is something that SCAA is definitely. This is how we work. Um, some other things, yeah, mechanisms in place for self-service. That's always important. How do you access support? So sometimes IT providers will push you solely towards email. The reason being is email is a little bit cheaper to service. Yeah, so make sure you find that out. And yeah, generally speaking, you should have a number of options. Yeah. So if you're a small customer or a smallish SME, you should really work with a IT provider where you can speak to the owner or the director. Absolutely. Again, you do not want to fall into that trap of being a tiny customer or an unimportant customer to an IT provider, because then you generally speaking will have a poor experience. Okay. Yeah. So if you get a quote without them visiting your site or taking the time to understand your IT requirements, that's a real problem. Uh, Again, it's like buying a house without having a look inside, basically. Just be very careful if that's a real red flag. Yeah, if your IT provider is relying on assumptions, look, the more assumptions, the more likely things can go wrong. And given that these contracts can be up to 5 years long, it's really important that you can identify an IT provider that's making broad assumptions without taking the time to investigate your specific requirements and asking you lots and lots of questions. Yeah, if they don't provide reference customers, or if you have to badger them for them, or it takes them a long time, that's always a real red flag. And yeah, if they don't have an escalation matrix, or they don't want to provide it to you, again, that should be a real concern. That's it. Thank you.